Hey, it's a great day for mermaids. It is pouring, which is going to play into our story very nicely. So I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of background on the mermaid books because there are 3 of them. And they will all be backwards because I'm using my back camera because that's how this rolls. So there's There Goes a Mermaid, a NorFolktale, There Goes a Mermaid. There's the Mermaids Yellow Jack, which is about the yellow fever epidemic in the city of Norfolk. And then there's the most recent one, The Mermaid Who Came In on the Tide. How did this happen? Well, once upon a time, 16 years ago, we moved here and I was exceptionally pregnant with our 4th son, Quinn. And Hurricane Isabel struck. And we had 9 days of blackout here in Larchmont. And we hadn't moved into our house yet. We hadn't found a house yet. It was a fiasco. And you can maybe imagine that this, being very pregnant with your 4th boy in a strange city, and at that time, my husband, my former husband, was working at the Virginian Pilot, who's a French page designer, and he opted to stay downtown through the whole hurricane and aftermath, leaving me super duper pregnant and with 3 little kids in elementary school and pre-K, alone in a rental house. And things were not good. So Ian, whose birthday is today, happy birthday, Ian, 25 years old. Ian was little at the time, 16 years ago, and he said, I hate it here. There's no electivity. This place stinks. And I was on the cusp of agreeing with him. And what happened was my husband had come back one night and he discovered that the household was in bad spirits. So he decided he's going to put us in good spirits, and he decided to take us through the city in our minivan, and he was going to show us the mermaids. It didn't go down well initially because I was roughly the size of Shamu, or a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade float, looking at these nubile young creatures, all over the city. And this book, the first book, came about because Ian, he is a very practical guy. And so we were driving around, and he and Zoltan, our oldest son, started this little game. And we drive by, and I started by saying, like, oh, look, there goes a mermaid, as we drove past. And so that caught on in the car really fast. So the boys were like, oh, there goes a mermaid, and they would claim it as their own. That was their mermaid. But that didn't last too long, and Ian started to really natter at his dad, and he was like, hey, Peggy, he was saying, hey, Pop, how come the mermaids are on a pipe? I noticed that all those mermaids, they're on pipes. And his dad was saying, to hold them up, because he was driving, actually, to hold them up. And Ian was like, well, yeah, but pipes are really useful things. So, like, they could have just used some kind of a stick. Why would they use a pipe? I find this very suspect. And so my ex-husband was at the point of, like, we're going to turn this car around. So I thought very fast, and we got to the next light, and I wanted to keep the peace. So when Ian was about to hit us with the next question, I turned around and said, okay, here's the deal. The mermaids are shapeshifters, and they turn into water, and they go down to the street, out to the river, out to the sea, right? And then when they want to come back in, they flow through the pipes and up into those mermaids you see, which are really their city apartments. And silence reigned in the car, and he was like, that is so cool. And we made it one light before he's like, how do they get out? So for the rest of the time waiting for our electivity to come back on, I had a yellow notebook, legal pad, and I wrote the book by talking to the boys, and we even came up with like these 10 10 things that you should know in order to spot a mermaid. And then I had never done a picture book before, and my publisher didn't want to do it because I wanted to give money to a local charity. And they said, no, we don't do that kind of thing. So I decided to call a friend of mine in New Jersey, Lisa Funari Williver, does some awesome books. And she taught me everything I needed to know about how to hire an illustrator, how to get a designer, how to do the book, how to publicize, how to do everything. And then I needed to find sponsors because I had zero money and was super pregnant. And the Virginian pilot, I got the Virginian pilot to do one half of the money, and then another group to do the other half of the money. And then it was kind of awesome because it became a charity, and we actually sold out of our whole first 10,000 book press run before the ship hit the dock. We had pre-sold them all. So that was kind of cool. But the reason that these books really exist in a very big way is because of two incredible people, Pete and Bess Decker. When I moved here, I started hearing about Pete and Bess, and I started, researching the mermaids, and I wanted to know all about them, and they had been the ones responsible for the mermaids being here. They'd seen the cows in Chicago. They came back here, and mermaids and sailors just seemed to go together, as Bob Batcher will tell you. And I had started to really hear a lot about the Decker family. And the more I heard about them, and the more I watched Pete Decker operate in this city and put people together and pair people up and take care of charities and motivate people, I really made this vow to myself that someday, no matter how much work it took, I hoped that I could get even close to the way that man was, I don't know, just a part of the city of Norfolk. He was everywhere. He was sunk into the bones of the city in every mermaid, and so was Bess. So that really drove me. It still drives me. I will never forget the day Pete Decker passed away, and we went to his funeral downtown, and I watched a high school marching band go down the street in Norfolk in his honor. So when I read tonight, I read for Pete and Bess and the whole Decker family. Thank you for starting this awesome, awesome legacy for the city. So we're going to start with There Goes a Mermaid. This book is a little different. I wrote it because as a mom, I wrote it this way, because as a mom, you read, and the kids, they know every word. So you can't shortcut anything. So I wrote this one so that there's a shortcut story at the bottom. So you could either read the text at the top, or you could read the shortcut at the bottom, and it's still right either way. And kids who are emerging readers, they can start at the bottom, learning to read, and then when they get older, they could read the full story. So funsies. All around the city, mermaid sculptures stretch out their arms, long hair waving, tails held high as if swimming in the sky. People pass them every day and cry, "There goes a mermaid." They don't know how right they are. These statues are more than just artworks. They're really mermaid city apartments. The pipes holding them in place go down to the street, out to the river, and out to the sea. Only artists will do for creating their homes. Norfolk has lots of artists, and here's how it's done. Mermaids are shape changers. Some old stories call them selkies and tell of them turning into seals. But our city's mermaids do much more than that. The mermaid only has to touch dry land to make her tail instantly transform into legs, and her shells and beads change into stylish clothes. The mermaid picks an artist, pays in sea treasures, and then slips back into the harbor. There she waits for the artist to finish her apartment and drop a key with her name on it into the water. The mermaid unlocks her pipe. She turns into water and flows through the pipes and up into her apartment. So the next time you see a mermaid, put your ear up to it and see if you can hear the ocean. Now, how does she get out? And why don't we see her appear? Excellent questions. Check the statues for tear stains. The mermaids cry themselves out of the statue's eyes. Drip, drip, drip. And when they touch the ground, they materialize in a blink. Some mermaids had artists add hundreds of tiny mirrors and shiny bits to their sculptures so the sun would dazzle your eyes at just the right moment and make you miss her appearance. Well, with all that sunlight, magic, and mirrors, it's just no wonder you missed the trick. Now, an important fact to know when mermaid spotting. Each mermaid's house is not an exact portrait of herself, although some are. Most are fashioned after what the mermaid does for a living because city mermaids have jobs. Some work at the zoo because fur and feathers are very exciting to sea dwellers. And since you can't get chocolate underwater, mermaids often work in candy shops. See if you can figure out where some of these are. MacArthur Mall. Oh, we miss it. Baking in the sea is also rather difficult, so Rowena, the mermaid, moved to Ghent, where she could make cakes day and night. Because they're such good friends with artists, they often work at museums. Bank mermaids are happiest when children come in to get changed so they can toss it into the fountains. They often grant little wishes to children who are especially well behaved in the bank. There are mermaids in the Navy. Some guard the harbor. Others go with the ships on missions out to sea, keeping them safe during stormy times. Oh, have you seen the flower mermaids who tend the botanical gardens? I guess you can see which ones are their apartments. Now, surely you've seen the ones teaching in our schools and working in our public libraries. No? Well, maybe you just need some more tips for recognizing them. Once you know their secrets, maybe you can catch a mermaid appearing. And if you do, who knows, she may even grant you a wish. Here's the Mermaid Spotter's Guide. Tip number 1. Mermaids are all ages, colors, and sizes. Some of the mermaids living inside of those sculptures are great-great-grandmothers. Tip number 2. They are happy, celebrating life every day, just like they were waking up to a party that never ends. Tip number 3. Their eyes. Their eyes, whether green as the ocean, blue as the sky, gray as a storm cloud, or brown as the rocky shore, always have the sparkle of sun on the water. When you look into them, you feel as if you're looking far out to sea. Tip number 4, their speaking voices are soft as sea foam, but their laughs are wild and free, and they sound just like seagulls. Tip number 5, mermaids listen to the wind, which they call mermaid's breath. The way we listen to our favorite music. Now, if you ask a mermaid the name of her favorite singer, she's going to tell you it's Varuna, a merman from India whose breath blows across the ocean. But, of course, that's another story. Tip number 6, when a mermaid stands near a fish tank, all the creatures inside go right to her. Tip number 7, cats. They follow them around and rub against their legs just as if they were walking cans of tuna. Tip number 8, because their eyes, and now this one is particularly important right now, so keep a lookout this weekend. Because their eyes are used to looking through water, they see better in the rain. And they often don't use the windshield wipers on their cars. So if you see a woman driving around in the rain and her windshield wipers aren't on, that's a mermaid. Tip number 9, they love salty foods. But mermaids can devour whole bags of chips and never get thirsty afterwards. And of course, tip number 10, and this is why the United States Postal Service is so crucial, because this is a key way to spot a mermaid. When mailing letters or packages, they spell the name of our city wrong as a code to their friends. Instead of Norfolk, Virginia, they write Merfolk, Virginia. And I know it's Norfolk, but it didn't work that way. So that is the end of the first mermaid book. This book was reprinted as a special anniversary edition, and this one gives to St. Mary's Home. And the mermaid books, some of them have your own coloring page. Now, I'm a little torn as to whether I should read The Mermaids Yellow Jack or The Mermaid Who Came In on the Tide. I suppose that given our pandemic situation, I should read The Mermaids Yellow Jack, a Norfolk tale. Now, this one was illustrated by Sam Hunley. Hey, Sam. And it was, I should mention, sort of fantastic, because what he did was he merged actual photographs of the mermaid. So every mermaid in this book is real. All the people are imaginary. Yeah, it was a sneaky, sneaky book. Did a lot of cool stuff. So we'll do The Mermaids Yellow Jack, and then tomorrow we could do The Mermaid Who Came In on the Tide. So The Mermaids Yellow Jack, a Norfolk tale. Now, this one was done by Joan O'Brien, who has since passed away. And it has a sneaky little thing, because this supports Bon Secours de Paul Hospital. Every baby born in Bon Secours Hospital in Norfolk, they go home with one of these. This is their book. And so I decided to do a little Easter egg hunt here. So you have to find the Bon Secours symbol, which is hidden in every illustration, including the cover. Why? Because I said so. Now let's see. Does anybody know why we have yellow flowers in bloom right now, this very moment, all over the city of Norfolk? Well, if you don't, you're about to find out. All around the city of Norfolk, Virginia, people see beds of yellow flowers. They say there's a very important story behind them, and they don't know how red they are. Love her illustrations. 150 years ago, in the waters of France, there lived a mermaid named Cara. Cara and her friends were nursemaids in King Neptune's Jardin de Bon Secours, which means Garden of Good Help in French. They studied the healing powers of sea plants and learned the soothing songs of all the sirens. It was hot day in 1855 when Kara heard a clear ringing chime like a glass bell. She swam towards the sound. It got louder and louder until she'd crossed the whole ocean and arrived at a little pier in Norfolk, Virginia. A girl was sitting on the pier crying so hard her salty tears fell into the water like rain. It was the magic of those tears that had called the mermaid. It is said that nursemaids can be called from 1,000,000 miles away by a single tear shed by a child in need. But that's true now, more than ever. What makes you cry out in ocean? The mermaid asked. It's a terrible sickness in our town, yellow fever, the girl sobbed. Her name was Aggie, named after her aunt Agatha. My papa's a doctor, but nearly all of my friends and neighbors are sick. Kara knew the sailors called this sickness Yellow Jack. It was carried by ships from port to port. King Neptune made up rhymes to help his nursemaids remember different sicknesses and cures. Oh, what was this one's rhyme? Old pirate Yellow Jack in warm weather will attack. If fever spreads to the land, cool their heads, hold their hands. When rain turns to snow, then will yellow fever go. There was to be no cure, only comfort. Oh, this is seeming pretty prescient right about now. The mermaid came ashore to help, and the second her hand touched dry land, her tail transformed into legs. Her shells and beads became a nurse's uniform. Oh my, cried Aggie. Well, if you can do magic like that, you can make everyone well by magic too. Oh, the mermaid sighed. There's no magic cure to human sickness, but I will do all I can to ease your suffering. Ooh, these pages are too fancy. There we go. Actually, I just haven't opened this book in a long time. Kara reached into her pocket and she pulled out a teeny little striped fish. Candy Stripe, I need you to tell my friends that they're needed here to fight Yellow Jack. Candy Stripe leapt into the water and was soon gone out of sight. Aggie led Kara to the homes of the sick. The mermaid placed her sea-cold hands on their fevered heads. She sang to ease their suffering. 8 more mermaids arrived with pouches of cold sea plants, and they too healed the hearts of the sick and cooled their fevered brows. The yellow fever raged on and on for 90 days, until at last the cold weather came. Just as King Neptune's rhyme foretold, rain turned to snow, and the fever did go. Yellow Jack was gone at last. Since they were no longer needed, the mermaids decided to return to the sea. 9 nursemaids and Aggie stood on the freezing cold pier. The nursemaids joined hands, and in one great leap, they plunged into the river, becoming mermaids once more. Unfortunately, Aggie's father saw the nursemaids splash into the water. The good doctor raised the alarm. Many came to search the icy waters, but since they never saw them come back to the surface, they all believed that they had drowned. Aggie tried to explain, they're mermaids, they love cold water, but nobody believed her. In the spring, the city planted yellow flowers in memory of the yellow fever days. Because little Aggie insisted, the mermaid became the city symbol. 150 years after the mermaids left Aggie's dock, the hospital created a mermaid sculpture in honor of the nursemaids to remind us all how charity did indeed come from across the sea. Hundreds of mermaids from far and near attended the unveiling. But that's another story. So interestingly enough, there's a little tiny post story to the story. And that is that a few years after the book was published, the Sisters of Bon Secours decided that mermaids were not what they had in mind. So they stopped the book from being sold and they changed the mermaid's tail from the Bon Secours symbol that was in that picture to a regular tail, changed the whole mermaid. And that's why you can't buy this book. Nope. You gotta have yourself a baby at Bon Secours because they don't exist anywhere else. They are that limited an edition. So tomorrow night we'll finish with the mermaid who came in on the tide. But for tonight, I would love to honor all of the nursemaids who are out there cooling fevered brows, holding hands, taking care of people when that's all that can be done for some people right now. And I hope you all stay safe and healthy and happy. And remember, keep an eye out for those women driving around this city in the rain without those windshield wipers on. Honk if you see a mermaid. See you tomorrow night.